Hi guys, so I'm back. I've managed to take care of rounds 11 through 15, so if you're watching this from part 1, which was 1 to 10, this is the rest of the video. Let's go through what I did basically. So I did a little bit of trial and error and eventually came up with some setups that worked for me. So I believe, yes, this was this one here. Okay, so I'm going to show you what I did here. I'll show you each of the medals individually, and if you don't have these exact medals, I'll try and suggest some replacements. My first slot here, I used a Chip and Dale with extra attack. The extra attack I don't believe was too crucial for this mission, but I do end up using this medal pretty consistently. So if you don't have Chip and Dale because you missed that initial high score challenge, Iago is a replacement. There aren't too many gauge restorers though, and it is quite important. So if you do have an Iago, it's going to be very, very useful for you. Chain of Memories Nominate is pretty much the key to doing this one very, very easily. Because that master is going to buff up, the barrier master is going to buff up itself and all the enemies in the stage, and instead of trying to catch your defense to survive, you're just going to use Nominate to copy their defense. If you have either a Joshua or a Bell, I would definitely suggest using that, Joshua or any of the World Ends With You medals, because that's not only going to buff you for itself and the next attack, but it's also going to do a dispel on the enemy. Because it's going to do a dispel on the enemy, any buffs or debuffs that you do put on it are going to be lost. So if you do choose to follow this setup exactly, in this slot right here I have some sort of buffer. I was bringing Ariel and Flounder along because it had second chance and because it provided a buff, but at the end of the day it wasn't super necessary. If anything, I probably could have used some defense down in that point, but like I just said though, if you do a debuff on the enemy, it's going to be lost as soon as you dispel here. So pick what you want to do. Maybe you want to use a Bell and then like a 3-tier buffer there, like Illustrated Kyrie or Pooh or Piglet or Pooglet, anything like that. And then basically some powerhouse medals at the back of your Keyblade. So I'm using Divine Rose because again, I haven't said this in a while. I've got that nice little 3.0 slot in the back. I've got a nice little Guild-Tab Militia B, which is going to hit all the enemies. It's not going to be super powerful, and in fact it has a negative ground enemy defense trait, whereas all the enemies in stage 11 are all flying. And I've got this Riku in the back there, which I realized I had guilted, and so I threw that attack boost 3 max skill on him, fully gave him some chips. And again, he's got the negative ground skill. Oh, and poison resist, maybe that's why I survived later on. Anyway, this is basically what I did. So if you need some more advice, definitely ask what you can do to try and maybe not mimic my setup, but I don't know, find your own way of figuring this thing out. Okay, so effectively we want to trigger the barrier as soon as possible. Whoops, let's turn off auto. So we've triggered the barrier now. We don't really have to use Chip and Dale again, so we may as well just skip it. Again, it wasn't super necessary to use gauges in this one. Nominate is the big winner here. If you don't have Nominate, you're in a little bit of trouble, because I tried a lot to try and keep my buffs up, like using like HPO, PTR, and a bunch of other like defense boosting medals, and it just wasn't it wasn't working for me at all. I was running out of gauges way too quickly. Okay, so Chain of Memories Nominate has been used, which means we're now free to debuff the enemy. So either in your 3rd slot or your 4th slot, basically before your big damage dealers, dispel the enemy in some way. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to buff myself first, and then I'm going to buff myself again while simultaneously dispelling the enemy. So now I've got full PSM defense +7 and also 6 strength as well. I'm going to have a crack with Militia here. It's going to do a decent bit of damage, but not heaps. So effectively, you've seen what we're going to do now. We're going to repeat this process over and over again. May as well throw off the Nova here because, well, no time like the present really. And we're going to do our final bit of damage here on the back. You can see it does next to nothing anyway. So despite the fact that it's a Guilted tier 4, it's really not doing any damage. Okay, so Defense Boost 2 triggered a ton of times. You can see I'm packing Defense Boost 2 on Chip and Dale, as well as Defense Boost 1, I guess, was just randomly on that Nominate. Same thing as before, we're just going to use Chips and Dales on, it doesn't really matter which enemy, because it's going to do 1 damage regardless, but the important thing is that it's going to restore our gauges. Now, this is really important. For whatever reason, you can see that we're still at +7 across the board. That's going to stick around until the next turn where we're going to go down to +5. Or maybe it lasts one more turn to +7. You do not want to use Nominate right here, because if you do use Nominate, you're going to copy their +3. You can see they're only at +3 across the board. if you copy them at +3, you'll go down to +3 and you'll definitely die from their attacks. So from this point forward, don't use Nominate anymore. You can just either swipe or tap, whatever you like, and then use your Dispellers, because you definitely want to dispel them, and your buffer. So let's do that, away it goes, and again, either use a single area of attack medal, an area of effect medal, to try and hit them all at the same time, or you can try and take them out individually if you have single target medals. If you do have single target medals, like Twilight Thorn, like the Behemoth and the Trickmaster, obviously you're going to have to go at them one at a time. I'd probably suggest going after the... I probably wouldn't suggest going after the Barrier Master first, to be perfectly honest, because he's at least going to provide you with some defensive buffs. If you take care of him and then your defensive buffs wear off, then you're kind of in a bit of trouble. You can see, it's a bit hard to see, but you can see that my character there is at +5 across the board. So it's a little bit weird. I am at +5 now, for whatever reason, but I'm not going to argue with it. It's fine, I'm at +5. That should definitely help me survive against all the enemies. We're going to Chip and Dale again here, Chip and Dale again, get us back up all those gauges. The reason I'm using Joshua here is because it's really, really costly, but with double Chip and Dale I can afford it. If you only had Chip and Dale or Iago without extra attack, you might consider using, and again consider it because watch the rest of this video first, consider using attack boost like 3 or 4 max there with an SP reduction skill, like SP0, SP1, SP2. Consider doing that. Because I don't actually use Joshua for the rest of this video, so if you don't have to, definitely don't spend the resources. Or even if you just have a blank SP0 skill, it's probably going to be pretty useful on your The World Ends With You medal. Okay, so again, we're going to ignore Nominate here, we're not going to copy, and we're just going to same again, buff, and attack. You guys can see how this is going. After this, they should pretty much fall on their face and die, so that's more or less going to be it. I think they don't die here, but... No, oh no, the pet might actually finish it off. Okay, the pet finished it off for me last time, so I must have got a low damage roll. But you can see, it's more or less exactly the same, so... I can pretty much just quit out of it here, but I may as well show you guys that I can finish it off. Okay, look at that. Our defensive debuffs wore off after the 3rd turn. And I don't know, does he cast Dispel on us? I can't remember. But you might want to consider keeping the Barrier Master alive if you do have single target medals, because that initial buff that you take with Chain of Memories Nominate will wear off after the 3rd turn. So if the Barrier Master's still alive, you can steal the buffs again and keep yourself alive. Anyway, let's just finish this off nice and quick. That should probably kill it. And we'll get the chest and we'll be on our way. I may as well quit out now because I don't want to waste the gauges. But alright, let's move on to part 12. Okay, so the next 4 setups are going to look practically identical, and the reason for that is because we're just buffing our defense as high as we possibly can buff them, and then just using our strongest possible hits to try and take out the enemies. It's going to be a real pain in the butt because by the end they have quite high defenses, given that they're quite high levels, but anyway, I'll show you what I did. So that was the last setup, and this is the current setup. Okay, so the name of the game is... Basically for quest 12, they're going to paralyze us. For this quest here, they're going to poison us. And for this quest here, goddammit, they're going to put us to sleep. If your pet is level 4, it's going to help you out tremendously here, because that Asuna effect will save us once from those status effects. No matter how many are laid on us at once, when that Asuna eventually kicks in, it will save us once, which could be all that we need. So these guys are really friggin' annoying with their goddamn paralysis. I actually got kind of lucky on this one because paralysis really didn't affect me all that much. So you might have to RNG it a bit to try and get a good strategy going. We'll try and eventually get a good run where if you believe you can pass it, but it's only the fact that you keep getting paralyzed, which is stopping you from getting your defensive debuffs off, is keeping you from passing it. I mean, we've got 11 more days basically to keep trying it over and over and over again until you eventually get that perfect run. So anyway, let's have a quick peek here. So... my setup for this one, and pretty much all the remaining quests, is some sort of buffer out the front. So I've got Sebastian because there's a 3-tier buffer, but also because I've got that skill on it right there. Again, it's not like it's necessary to have Sebastian. I know a lot of you guys won't, but Illustrated Kyrie you may have pulled by now. There are a couple of more tier 3 buffers, aren't there? Maybe I'm wrong on that, hang on. Okay, so these next 3 quests are Depending on if you have a setup like mine, where you have medals that buff your P and S and M defense simultaneously, like PTR for example, or HPO, or even Cinderella and Jack if you have that from a high score challenge from quite a while ago. You can use those in every single quest like I did, but more realistically, if you don't have medals that buff them all simultaneously, you may want to consider using the medals that buff just the particular attribute, because for the next 3 quests I'll show you, for 12, 13 and for 14, you're only versing one type of enemy at a time. So in the first round it's speed, which means you'd use the Prubem medal, I believe. That's a power, yeah, right, that's the power type medal which you use against speed type enemies, right? So you could use that Prubem medal that I just showed you, and that would give you +2. Yeah, I'll just show you. Right, so this one raises your speed-based defense by 2 tiers for 1 turn. So if you had extra attack on that, you're laughing. If you had paralysis resist on that, it wouldn't be too bad actually, because the enemies you're versing are fully like inflictors of paralysis. Same again, Cheshire Cat you want to use against the magic enemies, and Pluto if you have it. I believe this one was from a high score challenge, so this one may be the odd sheep out. It's an odd one out. But in that case, you might be able to substitute it with... That's really annoying that bloody Vexen B doesn't give you power-based defense. I'm still really annoyed that they did that. What else? Yeah, I guess PTR maybe you could choose if you had extra attack on it. Anyway, any way of buffing your defense as high as possible, as quickly as possible, preferably to +7, is pretty much what you want to do. You want to get those defenses up to consistently +7 on P and S and M for stage 15, and at least, you know, sorry, I expected the screen to load a little bit faster. You want your full-based speed-based defense in this stage, you want power-based defense in this stage, and magic-based defense in this stage. In this one, you need all 3. So whichever medals that you have, a lot of them came from Union Cross, but hopefully your account is that old that you do have those medals. If you don't, I really don't know how you're going to go about getting through these quests, because they're certainly difficult. Anyway, I've stalled for long enough. Let's show you what I did. So I used this exact setup for literally the next 4 quests back to back. The only difference is on the first one here, I used Marluxia B, my very first run, instead of Xigbar, but I think Xigbar is going to be a better and more versatile medal. Anyway, hopefully you guys all got Xigbar recently from the reprint event. Mine is guilted with 100%, so basically I'm going to show you what happens effectively. So again, the fact that I have an area of effect medal at the front is probably not the best thing, to be perfectly honest. Like, I'm going to use the crab there, Sebastian, and it's kind of going to bite me in the ass because they're going to retaliate nice and early. If I didn't have them retaliating nice and early, I'd have... Okay, so the pet's going to cure us. The pet's definitely going to cure us, guaranteed, the first time. Same again, Chip and Dale are going to be in the back, giving us some nice, beautiful gauges. You can see with that Cinderella and Jack, I'm already at +2 power and strength and magic-based defense, but if you don't have extra attack, Cinderella and Jack, this is where you'd be using Pruber. With a double cast HPO, I'm up to +4, which is pretty nice. Now we've got a choice, basically. The medals that I've got here each have -60 ground on them, which is very, very appropriate for these next 4 quests. I got preemptively very, very lucky without even realizing it. So whatever you have to deal as much damage as possible, you really want to take out these archers as quickly as you possibly can. So you either use 2 area of effect medals in a row, in which case you'd probably want to have a single target medal at the front, or I don't know, let's see, can Xigbar take out one of these guys on his own? He can. Okay, that's pretty cool. Unfortunately, the other one's still alive though, and well, let's use Riku. Let's see what he does. So Guilted Riku with attack boost 3 max and -60 ground defense is not quite enough to take it out, but anyway. Ooh, okay, we've just survived. Unfortunately, paralysis meant we skipped our buffer, but that's kind of okay, as long as we get off our healers. This is why HPO is so freaking good, because it gives you a heal as well. So even if you don't have Cinderella and Jack, like, all is not lost for sure. You can still definitely, well, hopefully pass this stuff if you have really nice defensive buffers. So anyway, same again, we're just going to use defensive buffers on the main enemy without the counter over its head. And, well, actually, that will change in the next quest. We should be able to just Nova off that other guy by now. Beautiful. And now we're just going to take out this guy. This guy is no threat to us anymore. He can paralyze us, true, but with our defensive buffs, there's pretty much no way he can kill us at this point, unless paralysis makes us skip. Okay, it didn't even paralysis that time, so paralysis is not guaranteed. I don't believe any of my medals have paralysis resist on them, so it's just definitely not guaranteed. Which is cool, because I was wondering, the first time I did this, I didn't get paralyzed a couple times, and I was like, oh, did I just get lucky there? But no, I'm pretty sure he can sometimes not paralyze you, which is nice. It means you can just go ahead and do as much damage as you possibly can. Yeah, I used my Lucia the first time, but I think Zigbar Bay is honestly the better choice, because that single target damage and that general defense debuff is quite nice. He's giving himself a little bit of a buff now, but we're already at +7. We've really got nothing to fear, so I'm going to skip here to the next one, which is going to be more or less the same. Alrighty, so quest 13, more or less exactly the same quest, except the paralysis archers are now poison archers, and the saber enemy has a counter over its head. The quest is almost exactly the same as before, except poison's honestly quite honestly less annoying, so it's quite good. The only difference is you do not want that counter to go off. No matter how much defense you have, that counter, when it goes off, is going to really ruin your day. So you do not want to let that affect you, if you at all possibly can. This is the entire reason I switched up to Zigbar here. As you start attacking him, when the turn runs out, he's going to start debuffing your attack, which means you want to kill him as quickly as you physically possibly can. Given that this is a power-based setup, I probably should be using a magic-based keyblade, except for the fact that Zigbar acts as a magic metal when I attack with him, so Divine Rose worked out really well for me. And again, given that these are power-based enemies, if you do have Pluto B, it makes sense to use him in place of Cinderella and Jack. I just have it because it's a very versatile setup, so same again, I'm going to go for it. To be perfectly honest, we don't even really worry about these guys here triggering poison. In my case, because I have healing medals that are going to bring me back to full health, like right now, so long as I take little to no damage from the enemies at the end of the turn, I really don't have to worry about poison killing me. And the pet's going to take care of one turn of that anyway, so I'm not too worried about that. Let's just undo auto right here, fire off the Nova for whatever damage we can. Again, they're going to reapply poison, but watch. At +5 PSM, it does literally nothing. And from here, we don't have too much to worry about, because we're going to take these guys out with our -60 ground Gilded Metal at the back. And from here, we don't really have too much to worry about. All we have to do... Oh, look at that, we even got a poison kill. Okay, right. So sometimes, not every time, he's going to have a really nasty offensive debuff on you. Look at that, -5 friggin' attack and -3 PSM. That won't happen every single time, but when it does, it's not a run killer, because you could buff out of it, but it's pretty nasty. It may end up being that, look at this, we're dealing like 1 damage now. I mean, which we were before as well, but even in our high-powered metals, we're going to be dealing next to no damage. Like, look at this, a Gilded Metal, 1 damage, right. So we are pretty much screwed here, because we're counting down, not rapidly, to a little bit of damage. Like, Zigbar B is a really good metal. So that sort of overcame the debuffs that we had. Okay, that time he buffed himself instead of debuffing us, so that's actually good for us. Because we can definitely take his buffed up hit, and now we can start dealing a little bit more damage back out. Again, all this weak crap's only going to do 1, but like this Gilded Metal right here did 31,000 instead of 1, so that was a very nice turn, and this should almost take him out just on its own. Beautiful. Well, there you go. So that's done. That's how I did it. Again, like, it's going to be almost impossible to help you guys out specifically, because my medals, my Keyblade level, my traits are going to be so different from yours. But again, jump on the Discord. I'll leave the link in the description as always. I've already helped a couple of people out, trying to get them up to, catching them up to where I was. So definitely ask your questions, guys. Jump into the help channel. We've got such a friendly community on there, and like, I love all the guys on there. They're very helpful to all newcomers, oldcomers alike. So yeah, let's move on to part 14, which again is going to be pretty much the same. Alrighty, and for quest 14, again, it looks very similar to before. Whoops. very similar to before, as you can tell. The only difference is it's a Chill Ripper now, with no counter over its head, which is nice. And the worst enemy in the game is these little sleep archers right here. If your pet is level 4 or above, it's going to have that Asuna effect. So you want to very carefully time that. So they're going to retaliate now with sleep, and then the other guy's going to give me sleep. That's fine, because the pet's going to cure it, but that will only ever happen once. So now we are going to be very careful. Ideally, we want to debuff these guys as much as possible, so that if we're able to do one solid hit on them, or potentially 2 solid hits on them, it takes them out in 1 turn, and we don't have to worry about sleep anymore after that. Ideally. Again, with our defenses so high as they are, we don't really have to worry about it that much, because even if they do debuff us, it's going to be a little bit of a pain. Check that out. Bang. And I believe the pet just comes... Oh, okay, cool. Last time they survived with a little bit and the pet came and finished it off. Again, that was a ludicrously specific setup because I had +3 strength, +2 PSM, and then I used a Gilted Riku with attack plus 3 max. So, unless you guys can replicate that setup exactly, then you might need a little bit of help tweaking that just to get enough damage to try and take him out in 1 turn. Again, it's not super necessary to take them out in 1 turn, but it does certainly help because then you don't have to worry about sleep anymore. You can just go nuts. Again, using a buffer that is an all area of effect medal might not be the smartest idea, just because if you can only attack the chill blade guy, that's 1 less attack, that's 1 less number on the counter going down on the sleep archers. Anyway, from here, I'll put it on auto while I talk, because he's pretty much just going to fall over on his face and die. Yeah, it's going to be tricky. I think this one might be the one that gives people the most trouble. Like I said, I just got really lucky in the fact that I have a Riku with -60 ground, which is, again, very, very lucky for me. I definitely believe you guys can do it though, but building up your defenses is going to be the key, not just for this mission, but pretty much 12, 13, and 14, and definitely 15, because 15 is a bit of a bastard, but... Okay, this is like, you can see what's going to happen here. They're definitely going to die, fall on their face. If you're not able to restore the gauges like I can, again, it's going to be a little bit tricky for you, but you just might have to be a little bit smarter with how you plan your setups. You can see I've got SP gauge 1 or 2 on pretty much all my medals, out of necessity for how friggin' expensive these defensive medals are. Saying that though, PTR only costs 2, so that's a pretty good defensive option if you don't have a HPO. Yeah, anyway, let's move on to part 15. And would you believe that I'm using exactly the same setup for part 15 as well? Again, the only lesson here is just boost your PSM defense as high as possible, and even if it takes forever, eventually you will be able to whittle down all the enemies. Oh, so an auto off real quick. Okay, the pain in the ass enemy here is those possessors. If you have a target that you're able to isolate and take out as quickly as possible, I would certainly recommend it be the friggin' possessors, because they are a pain in the ass. They'll give you sleep, paralysis, and poison simultaneously, whenever their counter runs down or at the end of the turn. So you definitely want to try and take them out as quickly as possible, but avoid their counters if possible. You can see here I've got the Chip and Dale, which I'm using to attack the spear guy, just because I don't want to drop that counter down any lower than I have to. So it's got a 7 over its head right now. I know that Sigbar B does 6 hits, so I'm going to try and aim for... Let's put me over here for a second because I don't want to miss. I'm going to try and aim for the possessors right now without using my fat fingers to miss. Okay, there we go. That's it, not nearly enough. So unfortunately they are going to... You'll be able to see in all its glory the pain in the ass effect that these guys do when they retaliate. You will probably need some defense boosters here to help you survive, and potentially even second chance. If you have second chance on a medal here that you're using in this setup, it's probably going to be a good thing. And again, notice that each of the enemies here has a different color. So the Pooh, the Alice and Cheshire Cat, and the Pluto Bee are not going to be helpful here, unfortunately, because it will only defend against one type of enemy, unless you had a strategy involving taking out... Okay, let's say you use Vexen B, for example. If you use Vexen B, it's going to give you magic and speed-based defense, meaning that you want to take out the Morningstar first, because he's the one you're going to be vulnerable to. Again, for whatever reason, Vexen B only buffs 2 out of 3. I can't understand why, but that's the reality of the situation. So, may as well use Riku here, because why not? It's not going to do that much, again, because it's got a negative ground trait, not a negative aerial. And we get to see in all its glory what this little bastard does to us. So we are definitely poisoned and paralyzed, but this time we might not be asleep. Okay, right. I would have died there to poison if not for the fact that my little pet friend just saved my life. So now we get a second chance to apply debuffs. You can see that in the first turn we only get up to +4 PSM, but due to the fact that most of these debuffs last for most of these defensive buffs last for 2 turns, means that we're able to get up to +7 this turn, which is going to help us survive in the future extraordinarily well. So Again, let's keep attacking the single target while we can. If you want to, you can use single target attacks on the Morning Star just to get rid of it and get it out of your hair. But again, let's move this stupid face out the way while we try and tap on a little possessors there just to get him gone. Okay, we are almost at death, so I could probably pop the Nova here to be perfectly honest and take care of him. But so they are gone, and now we just get to have some fun with the two remaining grounded enemies, which our ground-based traded metals get to have fun with. And look at that. At +7 PSM, these guys are doing literally nothing to us. So, okay, you'll notice that the Morning Star just got a defensive debuff, which is kind of annoying, but again, not the end of the world. And the Blitz Spear, whatever his name is, got a PSM buff as well. Again, not too annoying. Eventually, we will whittle this guy down, so whatever, that's just the way it's going to go. Alright, I might as well put it on auto mode from here. But basically, that's it. Like, the video is more or less over at this point. You can see what I've done. Again, it's pretty specific to me because these are the medals that I had. You really need to look through your medal list and sort of think, alright, what are my strongest medals here? I want to use those as my damage dealers. Okay, they're going to be my damage dealers. I'm going to find a keyblade that's going to suit them quite nicely. Oh, look at that, he can paralyze you. And I need some defensive buffs. Defensive buffs are so freaking important here. Don't be afraid and to consider doing this. I wouldn't recommend it off the bat until you've given it a good try. And be aware, we've got like 12 more days of this event, so it's not like you have to rush out and do this immediately. But the skip tickets that you've been earning during this time, they won't get you the reward, no matter what the friggin' notice says. The notice is a dirty liar. They won't get you the reward from the event. But if you think that you could somehow pass Quest 15, for example, but you couldn't pass one of the earlier ones, I kind of want to quit out here because I don't want to waste SP. Alright, bugger, whatever. I've wasted SP, it's fine. Anyway, that was it. If you think you could pass Quest 15 somehow, but you couldn't pass the rest, you could potentially use some skip tickets to get yourself up to here. Because that way, when you do complete Quest 15, you get 3,000 jewels. I don't know if I'd recommend that though, because if you can pass Quest 15, then you can definitely pass 14, 13, and 12. Again, 14 is kind of a pain because they're sleep archers, but it's not the end of the world. But be warned, if you do skip over them, it will let you literally pass over the quest, but it won't let you get the rewards from it. So you'd effectively burn one skip ticket, but then you'd also miss out on the skip ticket from this event if you did choose to use one. Again, if you can beat this quest, you can definitely beat this one, and this one right here. Like I said, Chain of Memories and Naminé is pretty much the key to doing that one there. And again, if you need specific advice, which I'm sure some of you guys will, that's totally fine. Come on my Discord, we'll have a little chat. Please post in the help chat because I'm about to go to bed, for example. You won't be able to get me for a few more hours. But all the guys in there are so very helpful. Look out for the guys with the green names. I've dubbed them as my heroic helpers. And if I notice you or any of the admin team notice you being helpers as well, then you could earn a little green tag over your name as well. I don't know, for whatever that's worth. But it just means that I really appreciate the good work that you do in helping out the rest of the community, helping us all trying to complete the content, and yeah, just having fun with the game. So I really hope this has helped, guys, even if it's not specifically, just some thoughts about how you could maybe pass it yourself. Like I said, look through your medals, look for what has the applicable traits that you might need, like any gilted medals that you have, even if they're tier 3, hell, I mean, even if they're tier 2 potentially, that have like negative 60 ground, negative 60 ground, negative 60 ground, or negative 60 aerial would help you in this one. I'm sure you got something in your list that's going to help you out. It's part of the fun, right? It's part of the fun in this game to figure out what medals that you have that can actually help you pass the content. Like, I was ripping my hair out for ages trying to go like, I can't get enough PSM buffs to survive their hits, and then I realized, oh wait, the game's giving them to me right there. I can use Naminé in one slot, and then Bell in a second slot, rather than use a defensive buffer, a defensive buffer, a defensive buffer, and then Bell. I could do exactly the same amount of work in 2 slots that I was doing in 4 before. And it's just fun like that, guys. So I really hope this has helped you in some way, guys. And if not, let me know. Let me know your situation. Jump on my Discord, we'll have a chat. Good luck, guys. All the best. I'll catch you later. I'm going to bed. Bye.